The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Adelaide Cottage, casting long shadows across the pristine floors. Kate stood in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, gazing out at the manicured gardens that surrounded their Windsor home. It was supposed to be an ordinary Thursday morning, the kind where routine provided comfort and predictability shaped the day ahead. Charlotte, her 8-year-old daughter, had already finished breakfast and was upstairs preparing for school. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the house, a familiar rhythm that Kate had come to cherish. George was in the study with William, going over his homework one last time, while Louis played quietly with his building blocks in the nursery under the watchful eye of Maria, their trusted nanny. Kate glanced at the clock on the wall. They had precisely 20 minutes before they needed to leave for the school run. She took another sip of her tea, savoring the brief moment of quiet before the day truly began. The Princess of Wales had learned to treasure these small pockets of peace, knowing how quickly they could evaporate in the whirlwind of royal duties and family life. "Mummy," Charlotte's voice rang out from upstairs, breaking through Kate's reverie. There was something in her daughter's tone that made Kate set down her cup immediately. It wasn't the usual call for help with a stubborn button or a missing hair ribbon. This was different. Kate hurried up the stairs, her soft-soled shoes barely making a sound on the carpeted steps. She found Charlotte standing in the hallway outside her bedroom, still in her school uniform, but with her blazer hanging limply from one hand. The little princess's face was pale, her blue eyes wide with an emotion Kate couldn't quite place. "Darling, what's wrong?" Kate knelt down to Charlotte's level, her maternal instincts immediately on high alert. She reached out to smooth a strand of hair away from her daughter's face, noting the slight tremor in Charlotte's lower lip. Charlotte opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. She glanced toward her bedroom door, then back at her mother. I saw something, Mummy. Yesterday, at school." Kate's brow furrowed with concern. Thomas's Battersea had always been a safe haven for her children, a place where they could experience as normal a childhood as possible despite their unique circumstances. The school had stringent security measures and carefully vetted staff. "What did you see, sweetheart?" Charlotte shifted her weight from one foot to the other, clearly struggling with whether to share what was troubling her. Kate waited patiently, knowing that pushing too hard might cause her sensitive daughter to retreat entirely. The hallway seemed to grow quieter, as if the house itself was holding its breath. It was during break time. Charlotte finally began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was with my friends near the playground, and I saw some older children looking at something on a phone. They were laughing, but it wasn't nice laughing." Kate felt a familiar tightness in her chest. In an age of smartphones and social media, protecting her children from inappropriate content was an ongoing challenge. Despite the school's strict policies about devices, things sometimes slipped through the cracks. "Did you see what was on the phone?" Kate asked gently, keeping her voice neutral despite the alarm bells ringing in her head. Charlotte nodded slowly. They were looking at pictures. Pictures of... She paused, swallowing hard. "Pictures of you, Mummy." And they were saying things. Mean things. The tightness in Kate's chest intensified. She had dealt with media scrutiny for over a decade, had developed a thick skin when it came to criticism and unflattering coverage. But hearing that her young daughter had been exposed to it, had witnessed other children mocking her mother, was a different kind of pain entirely. "Oh, my darling." Kate pulled Charlotte into a gentle embrace, feeling the small body relax slightly against her. "I'm so sorry you had to see that. Can you tell me what kind of things they were saying?" Charlotte's voice was muffled against Kate's shoulder. "They said you looked tired and old in the pictures. They laughed about your clothes. One of them said their mum thinks you're..." She pulled back slightly, looking up at Kate with worried eyes. "They used words I don't understand, but I know they weren't nice." Kate maintained her composure, though inside she felt as if someone had reached in her chest and squeezed her heart. She had always known this day would come, the day when her children would become aware of the criticism and judgment that came with their family's position. She had just hoped it would be later, when they were older and better equipped to understand and process it. "Charlotte, look at me." Kate said softly, tilting her daughter's chin up gently. Sometimes people say unkind things about others, especially about people they see in newspapers or on television. It doesn't mean those things are true, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the person they're talking about. But why would they be mean about you? Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. You're the kindest mummy in the whole world. You help so many people. I don't understand why anyone would want to hurt your feelings. Kate felt her own eyes begin to sting. The innocence in Charlotte's voice, the pure confusion about why anyone would want to cause pain to someone else, was both heartbreaking and beautiful. She gathered her thoughts, knowing that her response to this moment could shape how Charlotte viewed not only the situation, but also how she handled adversity in the future. People sometimes say mean things for lots of reasons. Kate explained carefully. Sometimes they're having a bad day and take it out on others. Sometimes they feel jealous or insecure. And sometimes, especially when it comes to people in the public like our family, they forget that we're real people with real feelings. Charlotte absorbed this information, her young mind clearly working to process it. Did it hurt your feelings when I told you? Kate considered lying, telling Charlotte that words couldn't hurt her, that she was above such things. But she had always believed in age-appropriate honesty with her children. A little bit, she admitted. Not because of what they said, but because I'm sad that you had to hear it. I never want you to feel upset or worried about me. I didn't say anything to them, Charlotte said quickly, as if worried she might be in trouble. I just walked away. But I kept thinking about it all day yesterday, and I had a dream about it last night. Kate's heart sank further. The fact that this incident had disturbed Charlotte enough to affect her sleep was deeply concerning. You did exactly the right thing by walking away, she assured her daughter. And I'm so proud of you for telling me about it. That was very brave. William appeared at the top of the stairs, having noticed the prolonged absence of both his wife and daughter. His expression shifted from casual curiosity to concern as he took in the scene before him. Kate kneeling on the floor, Charlotte in her arms, both of them looking somber. Everything all right? He asked quietly, his eyes meeting Kate's over Charlotte's head. Kate gave him a look that said, "We'll talk later," and nodded slightly. Charlotte and I were just having an important chat. Why don't you go finish getting ready for school, darling? Daddy, and I will be down in just a moment. Charlotte hesitated, then hugged Kate tightly once more before heading to her room. Once her door clicked shut, Kate stood, her knees protesting slightly after kneeling on the hard floor. William immediately moved closer, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture of support. What happened? He asked in a low voice. Kate quickly filled him in on Charlotte's revelation. She watched as William's jaw tightened, the protective father in him clearly bristling at the idea of his daughter being exposed to such negativity. Which children were they? William's voice had taken on a harder edge. We need to speak to the school. William, Kate interrupted gently. We can't fight every battle. And we certainly can't demand the school discipline children for looking at media coverage, however unkind. What we can do is help Charlotte process this and prepare all of them for more incidents like this in the future. William ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Kate recognized as his way of trying to calm himself. I know you're right. It's just, she's 8 years old, Kate. 8. She shouldn't have to deal with this yet. I know, Kate whispered, leaning into his solid presence. But we always knew this was part of the price. The question is how we help them navigate it. They stood together in the hallway for a moment, united in their concern for their daughter and frustration at the situation. The sound of George calling out a question to Maria drifted up from below, a reminder that life needed to continue despite this unwelcome development. I'll talk to her teacher discreetly, Kate said finally. Not to make a fuss, but just to ensure they're aware and can keep an eye on things. And I think we need to have a broader conversation with all 3 children about media coverage and public perception. William nodded. We should probably loop in the communications team too. If children at school are accessing and sharing photos, we need to know what's out there. Kate felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her, despite the early hour. The constant vigilance required to protect her children while also preparing them for public life, was relentless. Every decision felt weighted with significance. Every parenting choice scrutinized not just by her and William, but potentially by the entire world. "Mummy!" Lewis's voice rang out from downstairs. "Where are you?" "Maria says it's nearly time for school." The interruption broke the heavy moment. Kate straightened her shoulders, slipping back into the role of organized mother. "We should go. We could talk more about this tonight after they're in bed." As they headed downstairs, Kate's mind was already racing ahead. She would need to check in with Charlotte throughout the day, perhaps arrange some special one-on-one time after school. She would need to coordinate with the school without making Charlotte feel singled out or different. And she would need to find a way to address the broader issue of media scrutiny with all three children in an age-appropriate way. George was waiting by the front door, his school bag neatly packed and his shoes already on. He looked up as his parents descended the stairs, his expression curious. "What took so long?" "Charlotte's usually the first one ready. Just a small matter to sort out," William said smoothly, ruffling George's hair. "Nothing to worry about." "Maria, is Lewis ready?" The nanny appeared with Lewis, who was bouncing with his usual morning energy, blissfully unaware of the tension in the household. Kate helped him into his coat, grateful for his innocent chatter about the picture he was going to paint at nursery. Charlotte emerged from her room, blazer properly on now, her school bag in hand. To anyone else, she might have looked like her usual composed self, but Kate could see the slight uncertainty in her eyes, the way she held herself a little more carefully than usual. "Ready, darling?" Kate asked softly. Charlotte nodded, managing a small smile. As they all headed out to the car, Kate noticed Charlotte slip her hand into hers, holding on a little tighter than usual. The simple gesture nearly undid Kate's carefully maintained composure. The drive to school was filled with Lewis's chatter and George's questions about his upcoming football match. Charlotte remained quiet, gazing out the window. Kate caught her eye in the rearview mirror several times, offering reassuring smiles that Charlotte returned weakly. At the school gates, their protection officers efficiently managed the drop-off routine they had perfected over the years. Kate made a point of walking Charlotte to her classroom entrance, something she didn't always have time to do. "Remember what we talked about?" Kate said quietly, crouching down to Charlotte's level once more. "If anything else happens, or if you feel upset, you can always tell your teacher you need to call home. Daddy and I are always here for you." Charlotte nodded solemnly. "I know, Mummy. I love you. I love you too, my darling girl. So very much." Kate watched as Charlotte walked into school, her small figure disappearing into the familiar hallway. The urge to follow, to wrap her daughter in a protective bubble and shield her from all the harsh realities of the world, was overwhelming. Back in the car, with Lewis safely delivered to nursery and George to his classroom, Kate finally allowed herself a moment to process what had happened. William had taken a separate car to an engagement, but she knew they would be texting throughout the day, both checking in on their shared concern for Charlotte. As her driver navigated the London traffic toward her first engagement of the day, a visit to an early childhood development center, Kate stared out at the passing cityscape. She had 15 minutes to transform from worried mother to composed Princess of Wales. It was a transition she had made countless times, but it never got easier, especially on days like this. Her phone buzzed with a message from William. "Just spoke to Charlotte's teacher. She'll keep an extra eye on things. How are you holding up?" Kate typed back quickly, "Managing. This evening can't come soon enough. We need a plan." The car slowed as they approached the center. Kate could see the small crowd already gathering, phones at the ready to capture her arrival. She took a deep breath, checking her appearance in the small mirror. In a few moments, she would step out with a smile, engage warmly with everyone she met, and give no indication of the turmoil churning inside her. But even as she prepared to play her public role, her mind kept drifting back to Charlotte's pale face, to the confusion and hurt in her young daughter's eyes. How many more incidents like this would there be? How could they prepare their children for a life lived partially in the public, while still allowing them to maintain their innocence and joy? The car came to a stop. Kate's protection officer opened the door. The crowd pressed forward eagerly. Cameras clicked. Voices called out greetings. Kate emerged with a practiced smile, waving graciously. To everyone watching, she was the picture of royal composure and grace. None of them could have guessed that just an hour earlier, she had been holding her 8-year-old daughter while her heart broke a little more with each word of Charlotte's story. The visit to the Childhood Development Center proceeded smoothly. Kate listened attentively to presentations, asked thoughtful questions, and interacted warmly with the children. She participated in a finger-painting activity, laughed at a toddler's joke, and discussed the importance of early intervention with the staff. Throughout it all, she was fully present and engaged, giving no hint of her personal concerns. It was a skill she had honed over years of public service. The ability to compartmentalize, to put aside personal worries, and focus entirely on the task at hand. The people she was meeting deserve her full attention, and she was determined to give it to them, regardless of what was happening in her private life. During a brief moment between activities, she stepped aside to check her phone. There was a message from Charlotte's teacher. "Charlotte seems fine, participating normally in class. We'll keep you updated." The relief was palpable, though Kate knew this was far from over. One normal morning didn't erase what Charlotte had experienced or prevent future incidents. They would need to be proactive to find ways to build resilience in their children without making them cynical or fearful. The remainder of the visit passed in a blur of activities and conversations. Kate made mental notes of follow-up actions, posed for photographs, and accepted drawings from several of the children with genuine delight. As she prepared to leave, the center director thanked her profusely for her time and interest. "Your Royal Highness, your support means the world to us," the woman said earnestly. "The work you do to highlight early childhood development is so important." Kate smiled warmly. "The work you do here is what's truly important. I'm just grateful to be able to shine a light on it." Back in the car, heading to her next engagement, Kate allowed herself another moment of vulnerability. She thought about the cruel irony of advocating for children's well-being and development while worrying about the emotional impact of public scrutiny on her own children. Her phone rang, William's number appearing on the screen. She answered immediately. "How did the visit go?" he asked. "Well, very well, actually. They're doing incredible work there." Kate paused. "I got a message from Charlotte's teacher. She seems to be having a normal day." "Good." William's relief was evident. "I've been distracted all morning. Nearly signed the wrong document twice." Despite everything, Kate found herself smiling slightly. The burden of being working parents, I suppose. Though I doubt most parents have to worry about their children seeing unflattering media coverage shared by classmates. "No, probably not," William agreed. "I've been thinking maybe we should talk to Mother and Father about how they handled it with us. I don't remember being Charlotte's age and dealing with this, but surely it must have happened." Kate considered this. Her relationship with her in-laws had evolved significantly over the years, and she had come to value their insights on navigating royal life, especially where the children were concerned. "That's a good idea. They might have perspectives we haven't considered. I'll call them later," William promised. "Are you all right to continue with your day? You could cancel the afternoon engagement if you need to." "No," Kate said firmly. "That would only fuel more speculation and potentially more unkind coverage. The best thing I could do is carry on normally and deal with this privately." They talked for a few more minutes before Kate had to end the call as they approached her next venue. This engagement was at a mental health charity where she would be meeting with young people who had overcome significant challenges. The irony of discussing resilience and coping strategies while dealing with her own family challenge wasn't lost on her. The afternoon passed more quickly than the morning had. Kate found herself genuinely inspired by the young people she met. Their stories of overcoming adversity, putting her own concerns into perspective. Yes, Charlotte had been exposed to something hurtful, but they were fortunate to have the resources and support to help her process it. As she sat in a circle with a group of teenagers, listening to them share their experiences, one young woman said something that particularly resonated. "The hardest part wasn't what other people said about me," the girl explained. "It was learning not to believe it, not to let their words become my inner voice." Kate nodded thoughtfully, filing this wisdom away. Perhaps that was the key, not trying to shield her children from all negativity, which would be impossible, but teaching them to develop their own strong inner voices that could withstand external criticism. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent when Kate finally returned to Adelaide Cottage. She had completed her official engagements for the day, but the real work, the work of being a mother to a hurt child, was just beginning. As her car pulled into the private drive, she saw William's vehicle already parked, indicating he had managed to return early from his own duties. Inside, the house was filled with the comfortable sounds of family life. She could hear Louis's laughter coming from the playroom, mixed with Maria's patient voice. The smell of freshly baked cookies wafted from the kitchen. Mrs. Matthews, their cook, always seemed to know when comfort food might be needed. Kate found William in his study, but he wasn't working. Instead, he was staring out the window, clearly deep in thought. He turned as she entered and, without a word, opened his arms. Kate stepped into his embrace, allowing herself a moment to simply be held. "How was the rest of your day?" William asked quietly. "Productive. Inspiring, actually. But Charlotte was never far from my thoughts." Kate pulled back slightly to look at him. "Did you manage to speak with your father?" William nodded. "Both of them, actually. They were together at Highgrove. They had some interesting insights." Before Kate could ask more, they heard the sound of the school car arriving. Through the study window, they watched as George and Charlotte climbed out, their protection officer helping with their school bags. George was chattering animatedly about something, while Charlotte walked quietly beside him. "Let's give her a few minutes to settle in," Kate suggested. "See how she seems." They made their way to the kitchen, where Mrs. Matthews was indeed pulling a fresh batch of cookies from the oven. The woman, who had been with them since they moved to Adelaide Cottage, gave Kate a knowing look. "I thought the children might enjoy a treat after school," she said diplomatically. "Thank you, Mrs. Matthews. That's very thoughtful." Kate appreciated the older woman's discretion and intuition. George burst into the kitchen first, his face lighting up at the sight of cookies. "Brilliant. Chocolate chip." He grabbed one immediately, then remembered his manners. "May I have one, please?" "Of course, darling." "How was school?" Kate asked, trying to keep her voice normal. "Good. We learned about the Romans in history, and I scored 2 goals in football practice." George took a large bite of his cookie, then added with his mouth full. Charlotte was quiet on the ride home, though. Kate and William exchanged a glance. George, despite his focus on his own activities, was perceptive when it came to his siblings. Charlotte appeared in the doorway, having changed out of her school uniform into comfortable clothes. She looked tired, but managed to smile when she saw her parents. Mummy. Daddy." "Hello, sweetheart. Would you like a cookie?" Kate asked gently. Charlotte nodded and approached slowly. Kate noticed she chose to stand close to her, almost but not quite leaning against her side. It was a subtle request for comfort that Kate immediately honored, placing a gentle hand on Charlotte's shoulder. "George, why don't you take some cookies up to the playroom for Louis?" William suggested. "Make sure he doesn't get chocolate all over the furniture." George, oblivious to the gentle dismissal, grabbed 2 more cookies and bounded off. Once he was gone, William pulled out a chair for Charlotte. "How was the rest of your day, darling?" he asked. Charlotte nibbled on her cookie before answering. "It was okay. Nobody said anything else. But," she paused, looking down at the table. "I kept watching everyone with their phones. I kept wondering what they were looking at." Kate felt her heart clench again. This was what she had feared, that the incident would change how Charlotte viewed her surroundings, would introduce an element of suspicion and worry into her school experience. "That must have been difficult," Kate said softly. "It's hard to concentrate when we're worried about something." Charlotte nodded. "My teacher asked if I was feeling all right. I said yes, because I didn't want to make a fuss." "You can always tell your teacher if you're upset," William reminded her gently. "That's what they're there for." "I know, but I didn't want to be different. I just wanted things to be normal." The longing in Charlotte's voice for normalcy was something both Kate and William understood all too well. It was the perpetual challenge of their lives, balancing duty and privilege with the desire for ordinary experiences. "Charlotte," Kate began carefully, "would you like to talk more about what you saw yesterday? Sometimes sharing our worries can make them feel less scary." Charlotte seemed to consider this, taking another small bite of her cookie. They were looking at photos from some event you went to, Mummy. You were wearing a green dress. They were zooming in on your face and laughing. One girl said her mother thinks you try too hard to look perfect. Kate remembered the event, a reception at Buckingham Palace the previous week. She had felt confident in the emerald dress, had received numerous compliments. But, apparently, the press coverage had been less kind. And how did that make you feel? William asked gently. Angry, Charlotte admitted, her small hands clenching slightly. And sad? And confused. You don't try too hard, Mummy. You just try to look nice for your work. That's not a bad thing, is it? No, sweetheart. It's not a bad thing at all, Kate assured her. But people have different opinions about everything, including how others dress or present themselves. What matters is how we feel about ourselves and whether we're being true to who we are. Charlotte absorbed this, her intelligent eyes studying her mother's face. Do you feel true to who you are? The question, so earnest and direct, caught Kate off guard. Trust Charlotte to cut right to the heart of the matter. She took a moment to consider her answer, aware that both William and Charlotte were watching her intently. Most of the time, yes, Kate said honestly. There are aspects of my role that require me to present myself in certain ways, but I try to do so in a manner that feels authentic to me. It's not always easy, and sometimes I might get it wrong, but I do my best. Grandpa said something interesting when I spoke to him earlier. William interjected. He said that when I was about your age, some children at school showed him a newspaper cartoon that was quite mean about Granny Diana. He was very upset, much like you are now. Charlotte's eyes widened. What did he do? He asked Granny about it, just like you asked Mummy. And she told him something that he never forgot. She said that newspapers and photos only show one tiny moment of a person's life, usually not their best moment. They don't show the full picture of who someone really is. Kate watched as Charlotte processed this information. She was grateful for William's father sharing that story, though she knew it must have been painful for him to revisit those memories. Is that why you and Daddy always tell us not to judge people by what we see in pictures? Charlotte asked. Exactly, Kate confirmed. A photograph captures just 1 second. It doesn't show what happened before or after, what the person was thinking or feeling, or what kind of day they were having. Charlotte seemed to relax slightly, some of the tension leaving her small shoulders. I suppose that makes sense. But I still don't like that they were being mean about you. And that's perfectly normal, William assured her. It's natural to feel protective of the people we love. But we can't control what others say or think. We can only control how we respond. They continued talking for a while longer, the conversation naturally expanding to include broader topics about kindness, empathy, and resilience. Charlotte asked thoughtful questions, and Kate was struck again by her daughter's emotional intelligence and maturity. Eventually, Louis bounded into the kitchen, chocolate smeared around his mouth despite George's supervision. His arrival lightened the mood considerably, and soon the kitchen was filled with the normal chaos of pre-dinner time. As Kate helped Louis wash his hands, she caught William's eye. He gave her a small nod. They had handled the immediate crisis, but both knew this was just the beginning of a longer journey. Dinner that evening was a lively affair, with George regaling them with stories from his Roman history lesson and Louis insisting on demonstrating his new jumping skills between courses. Charlotte participated more than Kate had feared she might, even laughing at Louis's antics. After dinner, while William oversaw bath time for boys, Kate found Charlotte in the living room, curled up with a book. She sat down beside her daughter, and Charlotte immediately snuggled closer. What are you reading? Kate asked. The Secret Garden. We're studying it in English. That's one of my favorites. What do you think of Mary? Charlotte considered. I didn't like her at first. She seemed mean and spoiled. But now I understand that she was just lonely and sad. People aren't always what they seem at first. Kate smiled at the parallel to their earlier conversation. That's a very mature observation. They read together, quietly for a while, Charlotte occasionally reading passages aloud. It was peaceful, normal, and Kate felt some of the day's tension finally beginning to ease. When it was time for bed, Charlotte hugged Kate extra tightly. "Thank you for talking to me today, Mummy. I feel better. I'm glad, darling. And remember, you can always come to me or Daddy with anything that's worrying you." Charlotte nodded, then paused at her bedroom door. "Mummy, those children at school, do you think they'll show more pictures?" Kate's heart sank slightly, but she kept her voice steady. "They might, but now you know that pictures don't tell the whole story. And if it happens again, what will you do? Walk away and remember that I know the real you," Charlotte said firmly. "That's my brave girl." After all three children were settled, Kate and William retreated to their private sitting room. Kate kicked off her heels and curled up on the sofa, suddenly exhausted. "Well," William said, pouring them each a glass of wine, "I think that went as well as it could have." "She handled it remarkably well," Kate agreed, accepting the glass gratefully. "But I hate that she had to handle it at all." "I know, but my parents were right. We can't shield them completely. We can only give them the tools to cope." Kate took a sip of wine, letting the warmth spread through her. "Your mother had some advice too, I assume?" William smiled slightly. "She did. She said the most important thing is to maintain perspective. That this is just one small incident in what will hopefully be a long, happy childhood for Charlotte. She also suggested we might want to have a quiet word with a few of the other parents we're close to at school. Not to make a fuss, but to ensure there's awareness." "That's sensible." Kate was continually grateful for her mother-in-law's practical approach to challenges. "I was thinking we should also talk to Charlotte's teacher about perhaps doing a lesson on digital citizenship and kindness online. Not specifically about this incident, but just general education for all the children." "Good idea. I'll mention it when I do the school run tomorrow." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. The house had settled into nighttime quiet, with only the occasional creak of old wood and the distant sound of a car passing on the road beyond their gates. "Do you remember," Kate said suddenly, "when we were first dating and those awful photos were published of me leaving my flat? I was so mortified. I thought I'd never be able to show my face again." William reached over and took her hand. "I remember. You handled it with such grace even then. I was so proud of you." "I didn't feel graceful. I felt exposed and vulnerable and angry." Kate squeezed his hand. "But I learned that the storm passes. The news cycle moves on. People forget. Most people," William corrected gently. "The children who matter, Charlotte's real friends, they won't care about any of this." "I hope you're right." Kate leaned her head against his shoulder. "I suppose this is good practice for when they're teenagers and have social media of their own." William groaned. "Don't. I can't think about that yet. One crisis at a time." Despite everything, Kate found herself chuckling. "Fair enough. Though we should probably start thinking about guidelines and education around social media." The online safety expert who came to the last Parents' Council meeting had some interesting suggestions. "Add it to the list," William said wryly. "Right after figure out how to raise well-adjusted children in a fishbowl, and before maintain sanity while doing so." They talked for a while longer, making tentative plans for the coming days. They would monitor Charlotte carefully, maintain open communication, and be ready to intervene if necessary. They would also need to brief their staff, ensure everyone was aware of the situation without making it bigger than it needed to be. As they prepared for bed, Kate checked on each of the children one more time. George was sprawled across his bed, one arm hanging off the side, completely peaceful. Louis had kicked off his covers and was curled up with his favorite stuffed elephant. And Charlotte was sleeping soundly, her face relaxed, one hand tucked under her cheek. Standing in Charlotte's doorway, Kate felt a fierce surge of protective love. Her daughter had shown such strength today, such maturity in dealing with something that many adults would struggle to handle. But she was still just a little girl who deserved to have her innocence protected for as long as possible. Back in their own bedroom, as Kate went through her nightly routine, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. She studied her reflection critically, wondering what those children had seen in the photographs that had caused such mirth. Were there more lines around her eyes? Did she look tired? Did it matter? "Stop it," William said softly, coming up behind her. I know what you're doing. You're letting them win, he interrupted gently. You're beautiful, Catherine. More importantly, you're a wonderful mother, a dedicated public servant, and the strongest woman I know. Don't let the opinions of strangers make you doubt yourself. Kate leaned back against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. You're right. It's just harder when it affects the children. Everything's harder when it affects the children, William agreed. But we'll get through this. Charlotte will be fine. They all will. As they settled into bed, Kate's phone buzzed with a message. It was from her mother, who they had briefed earlier in the evening. Just wanted you to know I'm thinking of you all. Charlotte is lucky to have parents who love her so much. This too shall pass. All my love. Mum X. Kate showed the message to William, feeling comforted by her mother's words. Carol Middleton had been an invaluable source of support over the years, offering the perspective of a parent who had watched her daughter navigate the transition from private citizen to public figure. Your mother always knows what to say, William observed. She does. Kate set her phone aside and turned off the lamp. I was thinking perhaps we should plan something special for the weekend. Something just for the family. Give Charlotte some positive memories to balance out this week. What did you have in mind? Maybe a trip to Anmer? The children always love it there, and it would give us all a break from London. We could go riding, have a picnic, just be together without any obligations. Sound perfect. I'll clear our schedules. In the darkness, Kate found William's hand and intertwined their fingers. Despite the challenges of the day, she felt grateful. Grateful for William's partnership, for their beautiful children, for the support system they had built around their family. William, she whispered, do you think we handled it correctly? With Charlotte, she felt him shift beside her. I think we did the best we could with a difficult situation. We were honest, but age-appropriate. We validated her feelings while giving her tools to cope. That's all any parent can do. I suppose you're right. Kate yawned, the exhaustion of the day, finally, catching up with her. I just wish. I know, William said softly. I wish they could just be children too. But we'll make sure they have as much normalcy as possible. And when things like this happen, we'll face them together. Kate squeezed his hand in response, too tired for more words. As she drifted towards sleep, her mind replayed moments from the day. Charlotte's pale face that morning, the strength in her voice that evening, the normal chaos of family dinner. It had been a day of challenges, but also of growth, of family bonds strengthening under pressure. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, she knew. There would be more incidents like this one, more moments when the public nature of their lives would intrude on their children's innocence. But there would also be joy, laughter, and love. So much love. Her last conscious thought was of Charlotte's words. I'll remember that I know the real you. In the end, that was all any of them could do, know and love each other for who they really were, not who the world perceived them to be. The house settled into nighttime quiet, the family safe within its walls. Outside, the world continued to spin, newspapers were printed, social media posts were shared, opinions were formed and reformed. But inside Adelaide Cottage, there was only the peaceful breathing of sleeping children and the steady presence of two parents standing guard over their dreams. The next morning brought new mercies. Kate woke to the sound of rain pattering against the windows, a gentle autumn shower that would clear by mid-morning according to the forecast. Beside her, William was already awake, scrolling through his phone with a frown. Anything important? Kate asked, her voice still rough with sleep. Just checking what's out there, William replied, setting his phone aside. Nothing new about the event last week, thankfully. The news cycle has moved on to other things. Kate stretched, feeling the familiar mixture of relief and resignation. The 24-hour news cycle was both a blessing and a curse. Stories that might have lingered for weeks in the past now often disappeared within days. But the sheer volume of coverage meant there was always something new being scrutinized. What time is it? She asked. Just after 6. The children won't be up for another hour. They lay quietly for a moment, enjoying the rare peace. These early morning moments, before the day's obligations began, were precious. I was thinking, William said eventually, about what Charlotte said yesterday, about watching everyone with their phones. We might need to talk to all three of them about digital privacy and being careful about what they share with friends. Kate nodded against her pillow. George is probably old enough to understand the concept now. And even Louis should learn that not everything is for sharing. Remember when George told his entire class about the time I fell off my horse? William chuckled softly. His teacher had a call and gently suggested we might want to have a chat about privacy. At least it was just embarrassing, not problematic, Kate pointed out. Though I do think your pride took quite a hit. My 7-year-old son telling 20 children that daddy fell on his bottom and said a bad word? My pride definitely took a hit. Kate smiled at the memory. These are the moments that made their unusual life bearable. The normal parental embarrassments and challenges that had nothing to do with titles or public roles. The sound of small footsteps in the hallway caught their attention. The door creaked open, and Louis's tousled head appeared. Mummy? Daddy? It's raining. Can we have pancakes? The non sequitur was perfectly logical in Louis's 5-year-old mind. Kate sat up, holding out her arms. Come here, darling. Why do rainy days mean pancakes? Louis climbed onto the bed, settling between his parents. Because pancakes are warm and happy, and rain is cold and sad. So we need pancakes to balance. William ruffled Louis's hair. Can't argue with that logic. What do you think, Mummy? Pancakes for breakfast? I think that sounds lovely, Kate agreed, mentally adjusting the morning routine to accommodate pancake making. Shall we make them together? Louis bounced excitedly. Yes. Can I crack the eggs? I'm very good at cracking eggs now. We'll see, Kate said diplomatically, remembering the last time Louis had helped with eggs. They'd found bits of shell in unusual places for days afterward. As if summoned by the discussion of food, George appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his school uniform. Did someone say pancakes? Louis has declared it a pancake morning, William explained. Want to help? George nodded enthusiastically, then seemed to remember something. Is Charlotte awake? She seemed sad yesterday. Kate exchanged a quick glance with William. George's protective instincts toward his younger siblings were endearing, even if they sometimes complicated efforts to handle situations discreetly. Why don't you go check if she's awake? Kate suggested. Tell her about the pancakes. I bet that will cheer her up. George departed on his mission, and Kate took the opportunity to get out of bed and pull on her dressing gown. The rain had intensified, drumming steadily against the windows. It would make the school run more complicated, but there was something cozy about being inside while the weather raged outside. In the kitchen, Kate began assembling pancake ingredients while William supervised Louis's eager but chaotic attempts to help. Charlotte appeared just as the first pancake was sizzling in the pan, still in her pajamas, but looking more rested than she had the previous day. Good morning, darling, Kate said, studying her daughter's face carefully. How did you sleep? Better, Charlotte replied, sliding onto a stool at the kitchen island. No bad dreams. Excellent. Louis has decided we need pancakes to counteract the rain. What do you think? A small smile crossed Charlotte's face. I think Louis is very smart. The pancake production continued, with each child taking turns stirring the batter and watching the bubbles form on the cooking pancakes. It was messy and inefficient, but the kitchen filled with laughter and the warm smell of breakfast. As they sat down to eat, George regaled them with plans for the day's Roman reenactment at school, complete with costumes. Louis insisted on showing everyone his new drawing from the previous day, a colorful creation he claimed was a dinosaur, but looked more like an enthusiastic scribble. Charlotte was quieter, but seemed content, carefully spreading jam on her pancakes and occasionally contributing to the conversation. Kate noticed her laughing at Louis's jokes, a genuine sound that eased some of the lingering worry from the day before. Mummy, Charlotte said suddenly, during a lull in the conversation, can I ask you something? Kate's pulse quickened slightly, but she kept her voice calm. Of course, darling. When you have to go to events and know people will take pictures, does it make you nervous? It was such a thoughtful question, showing Charlotte's attempt to understand her mother's experience. Kate considered her answer carefully, aware that all three children were now listening. Sometimes, she admitted, especially if it's a very important event or if I'm trying something new. But I've learned to focus on why I'm there, the people I'm meeting, the cause I'm supporting, rather than the cameras. Like when you visit the hospitals? George chimed in. You always say the important part is the patients, not the pictures. Exactly, Kate confirmed, pleased that the message had resonated. The photographs are just a way to share the important work being done. They're not the point of the visit. Charlotte seemed to digest this. So, even if the pictures aren't perfect, it doesn't matter as long as the work is good? That's a very good way of putting it, William interjected. The work is what matters. The rest is just noise. They finished breakfast in good spirits, the conversation drifting to safer topics. As the children scattered to finish getting ready for school, Kate began clearing the dishes, her mind already moving ahead to the day's requirements. That went well, William observed, helping her load the dishwasher. She's processing it in her own way, Kate agreed. I think she'll be all right. We just need to keep the lines of communication open. The school run was indeed complicated by the rain, but the children seemed to view it as an adventure. Charlotte hugged Kate goodbye with her usual affection, showing no signs of reluctance about going to school. As Kate watched her daughter disappear into the building, umbrella clutched carefully in her small hand, she felt a mixture of pride and continued concern. Charlotte was handling the situation with remarkable maturity, but Kate knew this was just the first of many such challenges they would face. Her phone buzzed with a message from her private secretary, reminding her of the morning's first engagement. Life moved on, duties called, but Kate's thoughts remained partially with Charlotte throughout the day. That afternoon, when the children returned from school, Charlotte sought out Kate in her study. She knocked politely before entering, a habit Kate had always encouraged. "How was your day?" Kate asked, setting aside the briefing paper she'd been reviewing. "Good," Charlotte said, but Kate could tell there was something on her mind. "What is it, darling?" Charlotte fidgeted with the hem of her school jumper. "Some of the girls in my class asked if I'd seen the pictures. The ones from yesterday." Kate's heart sank, but she kept her expression neutral. "What did you say?" "I said I hadn't, and I didn't want to. Then I changed the subject to the history project we're doing." Charlotte looked up at her mother. "Was that okay?" "That was perfect," Kate assured her, feeling a surge of pride at Charlotte's diplomatic handling of the situation. "You set a boundary and redirected the conversation. That shows real maturity." Charlotte smiled, clearly pleased with the praise. One of them, Sophie, said her mom had told her it wasn't nice to share mean pictures of people. "So I think some parents must have talked to their children." Kate made a mental note to find out which parent that was and thanked them discreetly. The village it took to raise children extended to moments like these. "I'm glad to hear that. Most people are kind, Charlotte. Sometimes we just notice the unkind ones more because they're louder. Like how one burnt cookie can make the whole batch smell bad?" Charlotte asked. Kate smiled at the analogy. "Exactly like that. But we don't throw away all the cookies because of one burnt one, do we?" Charlotte shook her head. "No, we just remove the burnt one and enjoy the rest." They talked for a few more minutes before Charlotte wandered off to start her homework. Kate returned to her papers, but found herself reflecting on her daughter's resilience and wisdom. That evening, over dinner, William announced the plans for the weekend trip to Emerhall. The children's excitement was immediate and loud, with George and Lewis immediately beginning to plan adventures and Charlotte asking if she could bring her riding clothes. "Of course," William assured her. "I thought we might go for a long ride on Saturday, just you and me, and Mummy if she wants to join." Charlotte's face lit up. "Really? Just us?" "Just us," Kate confirmed. "George and Lewis can have their own adventures with Daddy while we ride." The prospect of the weekend lifted everyone's spirits. As Kate tucked Charlotte into bed that night, her daughter seemed more like her usual self. "Mummy," Charlotte said as Kate smoothed her duvet, "I'm glad I told you about the pictures. I feel much better now." "I'm glad you told me too, darling. Remember, you can always come to us with anything that worries you." "I know," Charlotte yawned. "I love you, Mummy." "I love you too, my brave girl. Sweet dreams." Kate turned off the light and stood in the doorway for a moment, watching Charlotte settle into sleep. The crisis hadn't passed entirely. There would likely be more incidents, more challenges to navigate. But they had weathered this first storm, and Charlotte had shown she had the strength and support to handle what came next. The weekend at Amber Hall arrived with crisp autumn weather, the Norfolk sky a brilliant blue canvas dotted with white clouds. The 10-bedroom Georgian country house had always been a sanctuary for the family, a place where they could shed some of the formality of their London life and simply be together. As their convoy pulled through the gates on Friday evening, Kate watched the children's faces light up. Even after numerous visits, the excitement of arriving at Anmer never seemed to diminish. The house stood welcoming in the late afternoon sun, its red brick facade warm against the surrounding greenery. "Can we go see the horses first?" Charlotte asked before the car had even fully stopped. "Let's get unpacked first," Kate said with a smile. The horses aren't going anywhere. The familiar routine of arrival unfolded, bags being unloaded, children racing through the house to their favorite spots, the staff welcoming them with warm smiles. Mrs. Davies, who managed Amber Hall, had prepared everything perfectly, from fresh flowers in every room to the children's favorite snacks laid out in the kitchen. As William supervised the unpacking, Kate found herself drawn to the large windows overlooking the gardens. The peace of the countryside was immediate and enveloping. Here, the pressures of the past week seemed to fade into the background. "Mummy," Louis called from upstairs. "Can I have a blue room this time?" Kate smiled. Louis always asked for a different room, despite the fact that they each had their own designated bedrooms at Amber. It was part of his adventurous spirit, always wanting to try something new. "You have your own lovely room, darling," Kate called back, "with all your special things in it." She heard William redirecting Louis, and soon the house was filled with the sounds of settling in. Charlotte appeared at her side, having changed into comfortable clothes. "It's peaceful here," Charlotte observed, unconsciously echoing Kate's own thoughts. "It is," Kate agreed, putting an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "That's why we love it so much." They stood together for a moment, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. The events of the week seemed very far away from this quiet corner of Norfolk. Dinner that evening was a relaxed affair, eaten in the family kitchen rather than the formal dining room. George entertained them with stories from his Roman reenactment, complete with dramatic gestures that nearly knocked over his water glass twice. Louis insisted on sharing every detail of his day at nursery, while Charlotte quietly enjoyed her shepherd's pie, occasionally contributing observations that showed she'd been listening carefully to her brothers. After dinner, they gathered in the sitting room for what had become an Anmer tradition, board games by the fire. William and George engaged in a competitive game of chess, while Kate helped Louis with a simple matching game. Charlotte curled up with a book, but Kate noticed her watching the family activities with a contented expression. As bedtime approached, and the children were ushered upstairs, Kate felt the tension of the week finally beginning to truly dissipate. There was something healing about being here, away from the constant scrutiny of London life. Later, as she and William sat by the dying fire with a glass of wine each, they reflected on the week's events. "She seems better," William observed. "More settled." "The change of scene helps," Kate agreed. "And I think having time to process everything has been good for her." "I've been thinking," William said slowly, "about what my mother said, about perspective. We handled this well, but we need to be prepared for the fact that it won't be the last time." Kate nodded, having had similar thoughts. "I know, but at least now we have a blueprint. We know Charlotte can handle it with support, and we know how to provide that support." They talked quietly until the fire burned down to embers, planning the next day's activities and discussing the longer-term strategies for helping all three children navigate their unique position. Saturday dawned clear and bright, with the kind of autumn morning that made the countryside look like a painting. Kate woke early, slipping out of bed to stand by the window, and watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The house was quiet, that special early morning hush that she treasured. She pulled on a warm jumper and made her way to the kitchen, where she found Mrs. Davies already preparing breakfast. "Good morning, Your Royal Highness," the older woman greeted warmly. "Shall I prepare tea?" "Good morning, Mrs. Davies. Tea would be lovely, thank you." Kate settled at the kitchen table, enjoying the informality of the moment. The children have requested a full country breakfast, if that's not too much trouble. No trouble at all. I've got everything ready. Eggs from our own chickens, local sausages, the lot. As they chatted about meal plans for the weekend, Kate heard footsteps on the stairs. Charlotte appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her riding clothes. Someone's eager, Kate observed with a smile. I couldn't sleep any longer, Charlotte admitted. I kept thinking about riding Cinnamon. Cinnamon was Charlotte's favorite pony at Anmer, a sweet-tempered chestnut mare who seemed to have a special bond with the young princess. Kate understood the excitement. There was something magical about the connection between a child and a horse. Well, we can't ride on empty stomachs. Come help me set the table for breakfast. Charlotte cheerfully complied, and they worked together in comfortable silence. These mundane moments, setting tables, preparing meals, were some of Kate's favorites. They were the threads that wove their family life together, creating a tapestry of normalcy despite their extraordinary circumstances. The rest of the family gradually appeared, drawn by the smell of cooking breakfast. Louis arrived with his hair sticking up at odd angles, clutching his favorite stuffed animal. George came down discussing plans for building a fort in the woods with William, who was nodding along while trying to smooth Louis's unruly hair. Breakfast was a lively affair, with everyone discussing their plans for the day. George and Louis would indeed be building a fort with William's help, while Kate and Charlotte would have their promised ride. Can we jump today? Charlotte asked hopefully, spreading marmalade on her toast. We'll see how you and Cinnamon are feeling, Kate said diplomatically. Remember, we haven't ridden in a few weeks, so we need to take it slowly at first. After breakfast, Kate and Charlotte made their way to the stables. The familiar smell of horses and hay greeted them, along with the whickers of recognition from the horses. Robert, the stable manager, had Cinnamon and Kate's horse, Dover, already saddled and waiting. They're both eager for a good run, Your Royal Highness, Robert informed them. Cinnamon's been missing Princess Charlotte. Charlotte beamed as she approached her pony, offering the carrot she'd brought from the house. Cinnamon accepted it graciously, then nuzzled Charlotte's shoulder affectionately. As they mounted and set off across the estate, Kate felt the familiar joy of being on horseback. Beside her, Charlotte sat tall in her saddle, her posture perfect despite her young age. They walked at first, letting the horses warm up, following the well-worn paths through the estate. "Mummy," Charlotte said as they rode side by side, "can I tell you something?" "Always, darling. I was thinking about what happened at school. About the pictures." Charlotte kept her eyes forward, focusing on the path ahead. "I decided something." Kate waited, knowing Charlotte would continue when she was ready. "I decided that I'm not going to let mean people stop me from being proud of you," Charlotte said firmly. "When I see you helping people, or when you look beautiful at an event, I'm going to remember that moment instead of what anyone else says." Kate felt tears prick her eyes. The maturity and strength in Charlotte's words were remarkable for an 8-year-old. "That's a wonderful decision, Charlotte, and very wise." They rode on, the conversation turning to lighter topics: Charlotte's progress in writing, plans for the upcoming school holidays, a book she wanted to read. As they reached an open meadow, Charlotte looked at her mother hopefully. "Can we trot now?" Kate assessed the ground and nodded. "Let's start with a nice steady trot. Remember, heels down, hands steady." They moved into a trot together, Charlotte's face lighting up with pure joy. This was what Kate wanted to preserve, these moments of childhood happiness, uncomplicated by the outside world. After an hour of riding, including a few small jumps that Charlotte executed perfectly, they returned to the stables. Charlotte helped untack Cinnamon, brushing her carefully and offering more carrots as a reward. As they walked back to the house, Charlotte slipped her hand into Kate's. "Thank you for the ride, Mummy. It was perfect." "You're very welcome, darling. You rode beautifully." They found William and the boys in the midst of fort construction, which seemed to involve a lot of branches, some tarpaulin, and enthusiastic but questionable engineering. Louis was covered in mud, but grinning from ear to ear, while George directed operations with serious concentration. "How's the building going?" Kate asked. "Brilliant," Louis announced. "We're making a castle for dragons." I thought it was a military outpost, George protested. It's a military outpost for dragon soldiers. William mediated diplomatically, winking at Kate over the boys' heads. The day continued in this vein, simple, family activities that would be unremarkable for most but were precious for them. Lunch was a picnic by the lake, despite the cool temperature. The children played by the water's edge, closely supervised, collecting interesting stones and sticks. As the afternoon wore on, they returned to the house for hot chocolate and quiet activities. Charlotte worked on a puzzle with Kate, while William read stories to the younger boys. The normalcy of it all was its own kind of therapy after the stress of the week. That evening, after another family dinner and more games by the fire, Kate found herself reflecting on the day as she prepared Charlotte for bed. "Did you have a good day?" she asked, pulling the covers up to Charlotte's chin. "The best," Charlotte replied sleepily. "Can we do this every weekend?" Kate smiled. "I wish we could, darling. But that makes the weekends we do have here extra special, doesn't it?" Charlotte nodded, already drifting towards sleep. "Mummy, I'm glad we're a family, even if it means sometimes people take pictures and say mean things. Being a family is worth it." Kate leaned down and kissed her forehead, too moved to speak for a moment. "Being your mummy is worth everything, my darling girl. Sweet dreams." Sunday arrived with rain, but the weather did nothing to dampen the family spirits. Indoor activities were substituted for outdoor ones. Baking with Mrs. Davies, movie watching in the cozy den, and an elaborate game of hide and seek that utilized the entire house. During the baking session, Kate watched Charlotte help Louis measure flour, patiently showing him how to level off the measuring cup. The protective, nurturing side of Charlotte was beautiful to see, especially after the vulnerability she'd shown earlier in the week. Charlotte's being extra nice to everyone, George observed quietly to Kate as they watched Charlotte help Louis stir the cookie dough. "Have you noticed?" Kate asked, curious about George's perception. George nodded. "She's been different since the thing at school. Not bad different, just thoughtful different." Kate was struck again by George's observational skills. At 10, he was becoming increasingly aware of the dynamics around him. "Sometimes difficult experiences help us grow," she explained carefully. Charlotte learned something important this week, and it's made her even kinder than she already was. "What did she learn?" George asked. Kate considered how to explain it in terms George would understand. She learned that sometimes people say unkind things, but what matters most is how we treat each other and how we respond to challenges. George seemed to process this. "Like when kids at school ask me annoying questions about being a prince?" "Exactly like that. How do you handle it?" "I usually just change the subject or make a joke," George said. "One boy kept asking if I had a crown in my school bag, so I told him I did, but it was invisible. He stopped asking after that." Kate bit back a smile at George's creative solution. Each of her children was developing their own strategies for navigating their unique position, adapted to their personalities. The afternoon brought a break in the rain, allowing for a muddy walk around the estate. All three children ended up thoroughly dirty, but happy, Louis having discovered the joy of jumping in puddles with maximum splash potential. As they prepared to return to London that evening, Kate noticed Charlotte carefully packing a small stone she'd found by the lake. "What's special about that stone?" Kate asked. "I found it yesterday when we were all together by the lake," Charlotte explained. "It's smooth and perfect. I want to keep it on my desk at home to remember this weekend." "That's a lovely idea," Kate said, understanding the impulse to hold on to tangible reminders of happy times. The drive back to London was quiet, all three children drowsy from fresh air and activity. As they approached the city, Kate saw Charlotte's expression become more serious, as if preparing herself for the return to regular life. "School tomorrow," Charlotte said softly. "Yes," Kate acknowledged, "but you're ready for it. And remember, if anything happens that upsets you, you can always talk to us or your teacher." Charlotte nodded. "I know. I'm not worried exactly, just aware." It was such a grown-up word choice that Kate reached over to squeeze Charlotte's hand. Her little girl was growing up, perhaps faster than she might have in different circumstances, but with grace and strength. Back at Adelaide Cottage, the familiar routine of unpacking and preparing for the week ahead took over. But The piece of armor lingered, a protective buffer against whatever challenges might come. As Kate supervised evening baths and homework, she noticed Charlotte seemed steady, grounded in a way she hadn't been earlier in the week. The weekend had done its job, providing space to heal, time to bond, and memories to strengthen them. During Charlotte's bedtime routine, her daughter surprised her with a question. "Mummy, do you think there will always be people who say mean things about our family?" Kate sat on the edge of Charlotte's bed, considering her answer. "Probably, darling. When people are in the public eye, there will always be different opinions about them. Some kind, some not so kind. But we just keep doing our best anyway." "We keep doing our best anyway," Kate confirmed. "We focus on what's important, helping others, being kind, loving each other. The rest is just noise." Charlotte seemed satisfied with this answer. "Like static on the radio. You just tune it out and listen to the music instead." "That's a perfect way to think about it," Kate said, continually amazed by Charlotte's ability to find apt metaphors. As she left Charlotte's room, Kate found William in the hallway, having just finished reading to Lewis. They walked together to their own room, both processing the weekend and the week ahead. "I have an investiture ceremony on Tuesday," William mentioned. "I was thinking Charlotte might like to come watch some of it, if the school can arrange it. Show her the positive side of public service." Kate considered this. That might be good for her. Seeing you honoring people who've done remarkable things, the joy on their faces. It will be a nice counterbalance. "I'll have my office arrange it with the school," William decided. "Just for an hour or so. She can see the preparations too, understand how much work goes into making these moments special for people." They continued planning, both for the immediate future and longer term. The incident at Charlotte's school had served as a wake-up call that their children were entering a new phase, one where they couldn't be completely shielded from their family's public position. The next morning arrived, all too quickly. Kate watched Charlotte carefully at breakfast, but she seemed calm, chatting with George about their weekend adventures while helping Lewis butter his toast. At school drop-off, Charlotte's teacher, Mrs. Henderson, discreetly caught Kate's eye and gave her a reassuring nod. The communication between home and school had been excellent, with everyone committed to supporting Charlotte without making her feel singled out. "Have a wonderful day, darling," Kate said as Charlotte prepared to head into school. "You too, Mummy. Are you visiting anywhere interesting today?" Kate smiled at Charlotte's interest. "A new youth center in South London. They have art programs I'm excited to see." "That sounds nice. Maybe you could tell me about it tonight." "I'd love to." Charlotte hugged her quickly then, walked into school with confidence. Kate watched until she disappeared, then returned to the car with a lighter heart than she'd had the previous week. The visit to the youth center was indeed engaging, with talented young artists eager to share their work. Kate found herself thinking of Charlotte as she talked with a girl not much older than her daughter, who spoke passionately about how art helped her express feelings she couldn't put into words. During a quiet moment between activities, Kate's private secretary, Amanda, approached with an update. "The palace has been monitoring media coverage, Your Royal Highness. The story from last week seems to have died down completely. And I'm pleased to report several positive pieces about your engagement today are already appearing online." Kate appreciated the update, but found she cared less about the coverage than she might have a week ago. Charlotte's journey had shifted her perspective on media attention, making her even more focused on the substance of her work rather than its perception. That evening, as promised, Kate shared stories from the youth center with Charlotte, showing her photos of some of the artwork on her phone. Charlotte was particularly taken with a mural depicting London's skyline, reimagined as a garden city. "Maybe I could try something like that," Charlotte mused. "But with horses in it. That sounds wonderful." "Art is a brilliant way to express ourselves," Kate encouraged, pleased to see Charlotte thinking creatively about her own interests. Tuesday morning brought excitement as Charlotte prepared for her special visit to William's investiture ceremony. She wore her school uniform, but with extra care, understanding the significance of the occasion. "Will there be lots of people getting honors?" Charlotte asked over breakfast. "About 50, William replied. "Each one has done something special, saved lives, helped their communities, shown extraordinary bravery or dedication." Charlotte's eyes widened. 50 heroes. "In a way, yes," William agreed. though many of them would say they were just doing what anyone would do. That's what makes them special. They see helping others as natural, not heroic. The conversation continued as they prepared for the day, with George asking detailed questions about the ceremony, and Lewis mainly interested in whether there would be swords involved. There would be, for the knighthoods, much to his delight. Kate watched this family discussion with deep satisfaction. This was how they would help their children navigate their unique position, by constantly reinforcing the purpose behind the ceremonies, the service at the heart of their roles. When it was time for Charlotte to leave with William, she hugged Kate goodbye with excitement rather than anxiety. "I can't wait to see Daddy being official," she whispered. "He's very good at it," Kate whispered back. "But don't tell him I said so. We don't want him getting a big head." Charlotte giggled, the sound music to Kate's ears after the tears of the previous week. The morning passed quietly with Kate working from home, handling correspondence, and planning future engagements. Just before lunch, her phone buzzed with a message from William. Charlotte was transfixed. Asked excellent questions. Huge hit with the recipients. Photos to follow. WX, true to his word. Photos followed. Charlotte watching with rapt attention as William conducted the ceremony, her speaking with an elderly woman who had just received an MBE for services to nursing, her face serious as she examined the medals with a young man who had saved children from house fire. When Charlotte returned home that afternoon, she was buzzing with enthusiasm. Over tea in the kitchen, she regaled Kate with every detail of the morning. Daddy spoke to each person individually, Charlotte reported. He knew about what they'd done and asked them questions. One lady had fostered over 100 children. Can you imagine? Kate smiled at Charlotte's wonder. That's remarkable. What did she say about it? She said each child taught her something new about love, Charlotte recalled, and that having a safe home should be every child's right, not a privilege. I liked her very much. They continued discussing the ceremony, with Charlotte showing impressive recall for names and stories. Kate realized this experience had given Charlotte something powerful, a concrete understanding of why their family's public role mattered, why the scrutiny might be worth enduring. The man who saved the children from a fire was nervous, Charlotte observed. His hands were shaking, but Daddy spoke to him so kindly that he relaxed. That's important, isn't it? Making people feel comfortable. Very important, Kate agreed. Sometimes the way we make people feel matters more than what we say. Charlotte nodded thoughtfully, like how you made me feel better last week. Not just with words, but with hugs and understanding. Kate reached over and smoothed Charlotte's hair. You've learned so much this week, my wise girl. I suppose I have, Charlotte agreed matter-of-factly. Sometimes difficult things teach us the most. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Charlotte shared her investiture experience with her brothers. George listened with interest, already familiar with such ceremonies, while Lewis was mainly fascinated by Charlotte's description of the swords. When I'm older, can I go to one too? Lewis asked. Of course, William assured him. When you're ready. I'm ready now, Lewis declared, making everyone laugh. The conversation flowed naturally, touching on school, upcoming events, and plans for the weekend. Kate noticed Charlotte contributing more confidently than she had in